Welcome everyone, and today we're just having a short session actually, because we were talking in the staff room, and then we had the Academy of Culture here with us as well, and then we're talking about the point of view of isolation. And one thing that we realized was that many of us felt that at some point of our lives we faced isolation and that feeling of being alone, and it was for different reasons and for different, and it had also a different feel for many of us. But then the thing that united everybody is the fact that we had felt it at one point, at one stage of our life, for different reasons, regardless of whether there were people around us or a community around us or not. And the thing that was quite interesting was that as we were having breakfast actually in the staff room, we just decided to just record the conversations and carry on. So some of the staff are shy, so we're gonna forgive them for that. But in the same time, it will be quite an important, I think, discussion to be have as well. So if anyone has any questions or any comments, do not hesitate to put the questions and to ask us, and maybe to give a different feel and a different perception of isolation and that feeling of feeling alone. And I think what really started the conversation was the feeling of we started off by just explaining how, for example, for instance, we had a Naturally You project, and what we faced was that on the first week when we started, because we started during Freshers Week, we found that many of the students were feeling isolated. They were feeling isolated. They felt like they were not connected to a community, and some of them actually felt like they could leave their subjects, the study, just because they felt isolated, and that was one of the barriers to them enjoying the new life that they had. But in the same time, the home students were feeling isolated too, but for very different reasons, because maybe some people left their home or had to leave a job in order to pursue their masters or whatever. So then it was clear that the isolation was faced by all the people in the room, but from different perspectives. So for one person, it could have been because of a language barrier, or because they were away from home, or just because they had left their colleagues and then they were doing a new study, a new journey on their own. And then to other people, it was purely because they felt disconnected to their family members as well. But then all that meant, or all that made us realize how the human being does feel alone, although it can be part of a community. But being part of a community is not enough to remove isolation, and it's something that's deeper, something that we need to look into greater detail. So that's why we decided to have this discussion, just to also see what you guys think and for you to hear some of our thoughts. Thank you very much.
Bekan faire douane chair for the question. To what I'm standing, isolation has very few to do with language barrier or being away from home. Maybe sometime, some time you have that we call, what you think about, your lovers, you think about your family, but it's not really isolation.
Hmm.
That's a kind of melancholia I get you from time to time. Isolation is a culture, the culture of isolation, and the modern time has developed itself based on individualism. So now, when you come to Europe, when you come to what is called today the modern society, coming from what is called not modern society, what the difference between modern society and not modern society is that what is called today the modern society is based on individualism, and the not modern society is based on community. So community doesn't mean a lot of people being together. Community has nothing to do with people living the same house. Community has to do with people sharing the same spirit, irrelevantly of language and race and stuff, but sharing the same spirit. When I say sharing the same spirit, I'm talking about cooperation, mutual consideration. And in that environment, you can't have competition. But the modern culture is based on competition. It's based on you trying to get the most for yourself. So now in that society, people are alone. People are alone. And when someone come from Africa, China, you face this new world, because that is what it was called in the 15th, in the 18th, the new world. The new world was not a world of wonder. The new world was the world of individualism. Only you matter. You matter. You don't care about other people. You remember some American quote like, do that in your backyard, not in mine. So they had okay, this is mine, it's not yours. You can't do that. You own, not mine. Division, separation, fragmentation. Those are the pillar on which the modern society, what the European society is based on. So how these go down with people being very sad. I remember we call it movie Dr. House. Many people know, they say Dr. House was going on her a few years ago. I remember one of the particular very interesting episode catch my thought. It was about, you remember there was a black guy in the movie. It was one of the Dr. House assistants. So in one of the episodes, there was a family with some problem, and there was just were like cheating people, you know, and then they had the son who was looking after the parents. Now, due to the medical condition of the parent, this son had to develop medical knowledge. He taught himself to become quite a doctor. So when the black guy, I don't remember his name, I can't recall his name, trying to go through the symptom to understand what was going on, he was helping him, and
so the son was helping him.
Yeah, and the guy made some mistake as a doctor. The guy come, no, this is not the way you should do that. So he made
assumptions as a doctor,
yeah. So why it comes out that the guy has the skill of a doctor, and the black man, the commit boy, try to what we say, giving important in life. Say, okay, listen, you know very much, I'm a doctor, but I was about to make a mistake that you come and correct it, but without you being never enrolled in medicine school and stuff, I want to give you the podium for life. I want to help you. I want to recommend you to go to a medical school and become a doctor. The boy said, hell no. It was just specifically say, I want to stop you there. I see you alone. You take your breakfast here in the hospital every morning. I've been watching you because you have no one home to take breakfast with.
So this is someone who, just to cut you off, so someone who had a career, was a doctor, established
doctor, practitioner.
And he had many, there was other doctors as well, so he had colleagues, he had friends, he
yeah,
had staff. But then the young guy was highlighting, and see, someone who made it, someone who had a great career, and then the young guy who seemed to have no prospect is highlighting his isolation.
He was alone. You see the isolation.
Yeah.
That all speaking.
So what made his isolation from the point of view of the young guy?
The isolation was made from the perspective that he was living in an environment that was not his environment.
So he didn't feel like he was showing that he didn't feel like he belonged in that environment.
Yeah, but if you look, the movie was the only black man. Okay, in the hospital where you have 20,000 people, and it was kind of the only one. Okay, eventually people go together, people have story together, people eat together, and he was put aside, or what I put himself aside. But why did he do it? Because it doesn't fit the environment. And there they are there in community, but you are not. You are not in your community. You are not in a community. You came into that place for competition. And to compete, you have to abandon your own, because your community doesn't fit the environment. This is the key for isolation. And I remember, I recall the end of the story was like, okay, the parent recover, and the boy greets him, and he told him that, okay, you should go see your family. You should spend some time with your family, with your people. And the end of the episode was like, okay, you see that black man going back into an apartment, an empty apartment. He was alone. He was eating a cold chicken alone on a table bar because he was alone. He had a beautiful have a beautiful car, have a beautiful house, but he was alone. This is isolation.
Yeah, and I think it's such an important point of isolation, because a lot of the time in the work, what we notice, and also particularly in our own lived experience, is that when you do come to a country and then you have to learn the language, for example, you have to integrate the people so you can integrate into the community. So everybody accepts you and no one says no to you. But then the problem is, especially at school, it took a very long time for it to be corrected. Was that, yes, there was integration. Yes, the children in St. Roch's, we spoke English. But one thing that you would see at lunchtime was that you would see a big divide, which was that it was almost like there was a line or like an ocean that didn't mix. So on the one hand, you had all the Scottish students, and mostly it was Scottish student, and most of the students who look foreign, but who were born in Scotland on one hand. And on the other hand, you had all the students who came to Scotland at this later stage. So whether they were British, whether they were English and moved to Scotland recently, or whether they were black or Asian and moved to Scotland recently, they were sitting on the one hand. And then initially, the teachers tried hard to find out and to understand why was that happening, why did the divide happen. But then it was really hard, and then sometimes they forced us to mix, they forced the mixing. But then the truth was simply that every time a child came from a new environment, and they found another child who came from another environment who had faced the same struggle, automatically something was understood between them and a friendship was formed, just on the basis of, I understand isolation and I understand that feeling of being alone, and therefore everyone tried really hard to make sure that other people who came later didn't feel alone. But from the standpoint of the Scottish student, what made the inclusion really happen in the school was that realization of, one, the Scottish children, although they don't feel isolation, it's not that when they go home, it's not that they don't feel isolated at home, for example, due to parent issues, due to other things, because it was a place as well with a high rate of alcoholism and drug abuse and everything like that. So some kids were feeling isolated at home because they couldn't communicate with their parents or with their family members or siblings or whatsoever. So it was a case of the two groups had to learn that the other group does feel isolated as well and can feel the isolation. But even though it's seen in a different manner and it is different, but it's something that can be understood. But also the teacher also had to understand that the transition was important, because once the transition stage was very hard, and it meant that he actually could have a detrimental effect on the children going on forever. So in our case, one of the things that we did is we took part in this program that was, I think the program was I think it was funded by Comic Relief, if I remember. But as part of the program, what they did is they took a bunch of children. So they took a bunch of children from different backgrounds. So you had some Scottish children born in Scotland, and you had some children who were born in Scotland but from immigration, and then you had other as well who arrived later, like myself, because I arrived when I was 13. So then what we did was that we then had to talk about issues that we were facing altogether, or we had faced at one point, which was bullying and also isolation as well, and then that struggle to find friendship, that struggle to find a community. And then with that, we created a song. And then what that did is it united us so much that we then got to understand that we were facing the same issues, but with different hats. And then we formed a community. And the community was formed because they didn't tell us form a community, but it led us to listen to each other's struggles, to listen to each other's problem. And then we were united by the fact of we could see ourselves in the other person. And then when we did the movie, when we did the song that we recorded, it was no longer about how good it was, but it was this time that we spent together, the time that we spent together getting to know each other. And then with that, we had created a community, a collision. And I think that is what's missing nowadays, because when we look for communities, there are communities everywhere. Communities are popping up. There's student society, unions, there are so many of them. But then the thing that needs to be done is the people need to constantly work on understanding what are the common elements that we want to solve or we want to improve in the community, or what's making one person be isolated, and how can we find the solutions, the real solutions, and not just the solutions that look good on paper, but the solutions that can have an impact on the individual. And I think it's something that needs to happen now.
Absolutely. Another point, another angulation to look into it, like, there is quite a big confusion in matter. When you're born, you are told that, okay, you need to go to school because when you grow up, you're going to have a job because you have to look after yourself. Okay, first of all. In Africa, what is one thing we didn't much appreciate myself, I didn't much appreciate because I didn't have the correct understanding, is that we've always been told that when you grow up, you're gonna find a job and to look after others.
Yeah.
You know, that I want we to call that principle. Okay, you need to look after others. You've been taught that.
Yeah.
But at certain points, we were into a conflict, because we had that information coming from families. But at the other end, we have the information coming from your school that said that you should look after yourself.
Yeah. You
should look to become a doctor, and that for your own pride. Because when you become a doctor, you don't say, for the pride of my tribe, for the pride of my people. Now it's for your own pride. At the moment, there is something that happened. Well, in my time, we live into that conflict, and many of my friends stay into that conflict and didn't make it out. But you can make it out only in two situations. You completely broke, and then you have isolation, or you let it go, and then maybe you can achieve something. But because the only way of achieving anything in our life has been told through individualism, so the people who didn't develop much of individualism didn't make it out, because the thought was that, okay, you didn't develop that, so you won't make it, so you're gonna stop yourself from doing anything because you didn't develop that thing. Now, isolation is becoming a mental issue problem, a disease now. Okay, so the problem is that you need to know what you're going for. And if you're going for an individualistic life, what you're gonna have as cake is isolation. Why I say cake, I mean you're gonna have good life standard, or as people call it today, money in the bank, cars, house, but you're gonna be isolated, because it's not a question of living with others, it's the way you perceive reality. And because you've been accepted, that perception of you and yourself matter, that you should do things so that for you, at the moment the thought of I need to do that so I can uplift my people as threatened into your mind, then what you're gonna have isolation. That's why so many young people today are suffering isolation in the middle of 1,000 people. When you go to a university, you find thousands of people that live in a big building where they share rooms in apartment, but that suffering isolation. How come? You're not alone. You're not in the middle of the sea. You're not in the tropical forest alone. You're in the jungle of animals. You're in the middle of people, and you alone. 10,000 people living together, each one of them is alone, left alone by himself. Why? It's the choice you made. But you have not been told that the choice gonna bring you there. But actually, your isolation is the result of the path you've taken.
Yeah, and I do think as well is I like the fact of when you talked about the sense of responsibility in terms of we are responsible for ensuring that we have a community, and in a sense it is a case of like if as a community we don't protect our community, we don't protect what we are, we're gonna have children that are gonna grow into an isolated society. Because that's where it leads, that's where the journey goes as well. And I think it's interesting because in so many cases you can have isolation arising for so many factors, but as much as there's a need for more to be done, but there's also that individual call as well to fight out of that isolation as well, because it means that when you have a room of people and one person feels isolated, best believe that you're not alone to feel isolated. There are other people in that room that feel isolated, simply because a human relationship means at least a minimum of two people having a communion or having an exchange. So then if one out of these two people feel isolated, automatically the other may feel isolated as well, because they don't have someone with whom to have an exchange. So it is true that isolation can happen for so many factors that can be exterior factors. But when we talk about isolation happening for interior factor, that's especially when more needs to be done from the individual level, from the community, and taking back that power and taking back that ownership, because the individual will always be the leader of their own lived experience, because in transforming, you learn all the lessons needed and you can then pass it on to other people as well. So you know yourself, your situation or how the situation is. And in many cases, it's very difficult to know what to do. But one other thing to do is to find a community, to find people who can help you to understand that isolation and to really come out of it. And it's a wrong thing to do, to stay within that isolation sometimes as well, because as much as the isolation affects the community, but it also affects us as individuals as well. It affects the individuals and it affects the community, but it affects the individual first. And therefore, if the individual does something against the isolation, then it's strengthening the community. And when I see, in terms of one of the things that I'm aware now is, for an event to be successful, you need so many individuals who decide to come to support that event. But anytime when those individuals come, they feel like, what a great community. And every single one of them feel like, what a great community. But what's not realized is the fact that you made that great community.
Yeah.
You made that great event.
Yeah.
By coming. You made that thing to happen just by showing up. And that's the power of how much it is important to fight against isolation. For example, give again a short example is with student union. You find that a lot. There's a lot of clubs, unions and stuff, but first of all, people either won't take part of them or they'll take part of it but not really participate, because they don't see how their contribution will do anything. But the very element of you showing up, the very element of you being there is already a fight against isolation, because you're finding a community, and if there's any issues in that community, it's the community's job to fix it, to rectify it, to make it even better. And that's why I do think it is important when we talk about isolation, it's important to not lose sight of the fact that the person, the individual, has a lot of power to strengthen the community and to strengthen itself out of isolation as well. Yes, the services are important. Yes, the services make us stronger. But the power or the superpower or the secret weapon or the gem within all this is the individual who's taking the first step.
You know, you got called me in something I didn't want to talk about today, because it makes part of my new book with a new philosophy that's coming up. Now I was just gonna drop it like I said. So isolation is not a thing; it's a lack of something. So the problem today, where you look to the campaign around isolation, Okay, they're coming it like, okay, there is a new disease called isolation. Yeah, it's just like someone say, okay, there is a new disease called anger. Anger is a lack of food in your belly. It's not a disease, it's not a thing, it's a lack of something. You know, like sadness is not a thing, it's a lack of joy into your heart. It's not a disease, it's a situation of lack. So isolation is a lack of what? Not of community, as you say, as you put it out. There are community popping all around us. So isolation is a lack of what? Then I drop it like that. When we want to talk about isolation, we gotta talk about something that many people, all of you know as personal coach. How you call it again? Motivational coach or personal coach or personal growth. That's the word, personal growth. Okay, so personal growth, as the word already said, is very linked to individualism. That you personal growth. Now I got a bad news for you. Personal growth is a myth. It doesn't exist. You got me? You feel me? Do you feel me? Personal growth is a myth. I know that many people wrote books about personal growth. Many people become rich writing books about personal growth and making lesson courses about personal growth. I gotta tell you something as a comment. Personal growth is a myth. I don't want to say it's a lie, then I want to explain myself very well. In a coming to war in Black War, in a village, okay, 10 men go hunting. They're hunters. They go hunting. They're gonna spend 1 day, 2 day, 3 day hunting, and they're gonna catch something. An antelope, for example. The antelope is community growth. Okay? It belongs to the community, not to the hunters. The hunter ant say that, listen, we got an antelope, we gotta hate it from our south and let it where it is. No. The antelope is the community growth. And now when they go back in the village, the chef of the village or the lady of the village gonna piece it and give any house or any family a piece. That's personal growth. Personal growth is a result of the community growth as is it. You can't have personal growth where there is no community growth. The personal growth is the part that you get from the community growth. If there is no community growth, then personal growth. That's what I say is a myth. You can't have it. So, how did it link it into isolation? Because you're looking for personal growth. That doesn't exist. You're gonna go into your mind in the land of nobody. And the land of nobody, you got lost. When you are isolation, it's not your body that is isolated, it's your mind that is isolated, because they rift away. If you rift away in the land of no one, because for your mind, for your spirit to get anything, it have to come from the community growth. And without community growth, there is no personal growth. Do I chair?
Thank you very much for watching today and for listening today. And I think we're going to end there because it's something that we can go on for a long time, and we also have to get back to work. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. So if you've got any questions, don't hesitate to leave some comments, and we'll be happy to subscribe to you and respond to all your questions. Thank you very much. Until next time.